When Richard Monroe died, the world assumed his fortune would tear his family apart. Nobody expected it would put them back together. He was 82 years old, and by the time the news broke, it had already reached every major outlet in the country. Hotels on 4 continents, private islands, an airline with his name stitched into the leather of every seat. A technology company that quietly powered half the systems people used without ever knowing his name was behind it. Richard Monroe wasn't just wealthy. He was the kind of wealthy that reshapes a family before it even reaches the funeral. His 4 children flew in from 4 different lives, and none of them spoke to each other on the way. They didn't need to. They already knew why they were there. The mansion hadn't changed. Marble floors that still echoed. A staircase built wide enough for a wedding. And in the study, waiting for them, was the family lawyer, a quiet man named Elliot Grant, who had worked for Richard for almost 30 years and had never once smiled during a business meeting. He didn't smile now either. On the desk in front of him sat a single envelope, not a folder, not a binder full of legal language. One envelope, sealed, with 4 names written on the front in Richard's handwriting. The eldest son, Daniel, reached for it first. That was who he'd always been. First to speak, first to assume, first to believe the world owed him an explanation before he'd even asked the question. Elliot didn't let him touch it. "Your father left very specific instructions," he said. "I'm only allowed to open this once all 4 of you are in the room." The younger daughter, Claire, folded her arms. She'd built a modest career in nonprofit work, mostly to avoid the family name, mostly because she'd spent her whole life uncomfortable with how easily doors opened for her. The second son, Marcus, said nothing. He rarely did until it mattered. And the youngest, Ava, sat near the window, watching the light change on the lawn the way she used to as a child, back when this house still felt like a home instead of a headquarters. Elliot opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. No number, no figure, no mention of hotels, islands, or shares. Just a condition. Before any of you receive a single dollar of your father's estate, each of you must spend 1 month living as an ordinary person. No use of the Monroe name. No access to family funds. No influence, no favors, no shortcuts. If even one of you breaks this condition, all 4 of you forfeit the inheritance permanently. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Daniel laughed, the kind of laugh people use when they're trying to convince themselves something isn't real. "This has to be a joke." Elliot didn't laugh back. "Your father was very serious, and your accounts have already been frozen." Claire's phone buzzed in her hand. A payment declined. Then, another. She stared at the screen as if it might change if she looked at it long enough. Marcus checked his own accounts under the table, his jaw tightening with every failed transaction. Ava didn't check anything. She simply watched her siblings unravel, quietly wondering if she was the only one in the room who felt something close to relief. That was the moment the room changed. By the end of the week, none of them were laughing anymore. Daniel, who had never worked a job that didn't come with his last name attached to the title, applied for 11 positions and was rejected by all 11. He sat in his car outside a warehouse that turned him down for a stocking position, staring at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. Claire took a job as a waitress at a diner 2 hours outside the city, somewhere no one would recognize her. On her 3rd shift, a man screamed at her over a cold cup of coffee, and she stood there absorbing it because for the first time in her life, there was no assistant to handle it for her, no name to soften the blow. Marcus tried something else entirely. He reached out to an old contact, someone who owed him a favor from before the will was read, and asked quietly if a payment could make a few things easier. It wasn't much, he told himself. A small arrangement. A quiet exception nobody would ever trace back to him. Within 48 hours, Elliot called him into his office. "You understand what this means," Elliot said. Marcus went pale. It was a small thing. It doesn't matter how small. Your father wrote one rule. You broke it. There was a folder on Elliot's desk, thin but heavy with implication. Marcus recognized the letterhead before Elliot even opened it. Somehow, his father's people had been watching all along, quietly, patiently, exactly the way Richard had watched every deal he'd ever made. He didn't just cost himself the inheritance. He put all three of his siblings at risk of losing everything too. And when they found out, the anger in that house reached a level none of them had seen since childhood. Daniel accused him of always taking the easy way. Claire accused him of never once thinking about anyone but himself. Even Ava, usually the quiet one, told him exactly what she thought, her voice shaking with a fury none of them had ever seen from her. But something strange happened after that anger passed. They started talking to each other. Really talking. Not the surface-level conversations they'd used for years to avoid anything that mattered. Ava, meanwhile, had been doing something none of them noticed at first. She'd taken a small apartment near a shelter and spent her days quietly helping without ever mentioning who she was. She didn't do it as a strategy. She did it because it felt like the first honest thing she'd done in years. What none of the siblings knew was that Richard had been recording videos for months before he died. Hundreds of them, sitting alone in his study, speaking directly to a camera as if he were speaking to his children's future selves. In one of those recordings, his voice was quiet, almost fragile. I built an empire and lost my family in the process. I gave them everything except the one thing that would have made them decent people. I gave them money instead of meaning. As the month wore on, the distance between the siblings began to close. Daniel finally got a job, a small one, stacking shelves at a hardware store. And for the first time, he understood what it meant to earn something instead of inherit it. His hands blistered in places they'd never blistered before. And strangely, he found himself proud of that. Claire found herself defending a coworker from an unfair manager, something she never would have risked doing under her old name. She didn't do it because it was safe. She did it because, for the first time, it felt like something worth risking. Marcus, humiliated but honest for the first time, started showing up just to listen. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. His presence, quiet and steady, was its own kind of apology. One evening, all four of them ended up at the same diner where Claire worked. None of it planned, none of it arranged. They sat in a corner booth like strangers learning each other's names again. And for a few hours, nobody mentioned money at all. And when the month finally ended, all four of them stood back in that same study, changed in ways none of them could have predicted. They expected the number now. The real one. Billions, split four ways, the life they thought they were promised. Elliot placed a single folder on the desk. Your father sold almost everything, he said. 95% of his fortune was donated years ago. Hospitals, research facilities, scholarship programs for children who never had the chances any of you were born into. The room went silent in a way that felt different from before. Not shock, something closer to understanding. All that remains, Elliot continued, is one property, a single hotel. Daniel expected a fight to break out. Instead, nobody moved. Your father left instructions for that too, Elliot said, looking directly at Ava. It doesn't go to the oldest. It doesn't go to the most successful. It goes to whichever one of you learned, during this month, how to care about someone who could give you nothing in return. Ava sat frozen as her siblings turned to look at her, and for the first time in her life, nobody in that room resented her for it. Later that night, Daniel found the last recording Elliot hadn't shown them yet. One meant only for family, no lawyers present. Richard's voice filled the room one final time. If you're watching this, it means the month is over, and I hope it means something changed in you. I never wanted you to inherit my company. I wanted you to inherit the version of yourselves you lost somewhere between private jets and empty birthdays. Money will always find its way back. Character doesn't come back so easily once it's gone." He paused, and even through the screen, they could see the weight behind his eyes. "I didn't leave you an empire. I left you each other. Don't waste it the way I wasted my time trying to build something bigger than the people I loved." The screen went dark. Nobody spoke for a long time. Because in the end, Richard Monroe hadn't left his children billions. He'd left them the one inheritance that money could never buy, and the only one that ever really mattered.